How is everybody? Thank you, Simon and Ellen, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Attendees for joining. Today, we're going to take a moment and just look at how France has performed coming out of the lockdown. Consistently over time, throughout the crisis, France has been a couple of weeks ahead of the UK in key decisions that they've made and in how they progress to emerging out of the crisis. Excuse me. So what we'll do is we'll start off with a brief presentation, just running through the timeline of events throughout the crisis and setting the scene for the context between France and the United Kingdom. And following that, we will spend some time looking at introducing you to our two speakers today, who both have restaurant businesses right here in Paris and have been through this challenging, overwhelming experience of reopening in such a complicated time, whilst adhering to all of the government regulations, etc., that have been set out in France, and of course getting past all of the complicated sort of fears around consumer confidence and will they come back, not come back. So we'll be diving into that quite deep, and right at the end, of course, we'll allow a bit of time for everybody to ask some questions as you'd like. So first of all, just wanted to run through some of the key milestones to set the scene for you. As you can see on the slides we're presenting here, the French sort of actions pretty much predate the UK ones by roughly 1 to 4 weeks, generally speaking, throughout the crisis. On March 14th, France shut down restaurants, bars and hotels. The United Kingdom did the same thing on March 20th. France went into lockdown March 17th. The United Kingdom did the same thing on March 23rd. France reopened restaurants, bars and hotels only for outdoor space, which is exceptional to France. And the United Kingdom is doing the same thing this Saturday on July the 4th, but for all interior spaces as well. And of course, on the 15th in France, they reopened all bars and hotels, indoors and outdoors. And on the 15th in the UK, we reopened non-essential shops, except for hospitality businesses. So that just gives you a little bit of the context of the run-up, how the two governments or how the United Kingdom rather has trailed France ever so slightly throughout the crisis. And that really sets the scene for why we're looking at France today to give us some inspiration in the UK as to how and what we might expect coming out of the crisis. Some of the key initiatives that we've seen across the UK as well as here in Paris during lockdown is, of course, the emergence of a huge volume of takeaway businesses, a lot of businesses doing delivery only, contactless delivery through various channels, and of course, click and collect. A part of what we wanted to address today is just looking at, how profitable are these initiatives? Will there be initiatives that will remain longer term? We have quite a few businesses in the UK that have said actually that is something that will remain long term. Some people have turned their pub kitchens into delivery sort of multi-site concepts that serve out of one kitchen and decided that will remain forever. So certainly an interesting time to analyze that and to see whether it's something that's worth keeping in our businesses or not. Right. Finally, looking at some of the rules for reopening. This was specific to France when they reopened, just to give context to everybody in the UK as to what the rules were. Of course, as you saw earlier, they opened up terraces only at the beginning. And since the full opening, all guests that are indoors should be seated, maximum 10 people per table, and of course 1 meter distance between customers. Masks need to be worn by staff members at all times, customers only when circulating and entering or exiting the building. And of course, we have all these best practices, which is really aimed at winning consumer confidence. A lot of businesses have the alcoholic gels available to customers and staff at all strategic locations and all sort of high traffic touch points that you have. And of course, communication about what the businesses are doing around that front, quite critical as well. So lots of posters and hygiene rules being on display for both customers and for staff. There's been a few surveys done around the consumer confidence and how confident people were coming back to restaurants. And we'll look at some of the statistics from the French side that we've got so far. Pre-reopening, 60% of people were quite confident that they'd be very happy to go back to restaurants. 40% of people were a little bit more concerned around that. Sorry, I think we've skipped a slide ahead here. Let's look at this one. So for the 40% that were concerned, interestingly, they were quite concerned about the health and safety practices in the kitchen, not so much the sort of social distancing within the front of house spaces of the restaurants, but more the unseen elements of what happens behind the scenes. People felt more confident when it comes to fine dining establishments, for some reason thinking that the health and safety regulations might be stricter in those. I think for us in the industry, we're all quite aware that the regulations are exactly the same across the board. But of course, the preconception is quite understandable. So quite interesting that the 40% are really on the side of the kitchen that the concern sits rather than the front of house. In terms of just the feeling of the communities and how much they love their restaurants and want their restaurants to reopen and are willing to engage those, 74% of French people that were interviewed really cared about the financial difficulties of restaurants. 62% of them would be happy to order food directly through the restaurants rather than via a food delivery platform, which is again just a sentiment for the local business and local people looking after their local restaurants as such. Now, hopefully that sets the scene for you a little bit in terms of what has been happening in France, what's the context of the French side of things. And now I'd like to introduce Ellen Callan and Simon Cuddy, both owners of restaurants and bars here in Paris. And Ellen, I think we could switch over and just ask you to give us a brief introduction of yourself and your business here in Paris.
Yeah, great. Hello, my name is Ellen. I am from Sweden originally, but I've lived in Paris for the past 12 years or thereabouts. In September, my boyfriend and I opened Black Sheep Society. And yeah, it's a little neighborhood bar aimed at expats. Since I'm Swedish, my boyfriend's from New Zealand. We gear it towards the English-speaking crowd in Paris. It's a laid-back little bar. And yeah, we do pies, we do beer, we do cocktails, a little bit of sport, events. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Ellen. Simon, what about yourself?
Well, my name's Simon. I'm originally from Ireland, but half French, so I'd always planned on coming back to Ireland, or coming back to France even. And I've been here 7 years, so we've been open a year now. I opened with two French friends who I'd worked with previously, and we were just starting to do well before the lockdown. We're a French restaurant, semi-traditional. I mean, we use French bases and then expand upon that. And it's a small, cozy, romantic setting. Well, we mainly cater to older people, wealthier people who have all disappeared. So we're trying to get back to normal now. It's a struggle.
Fantastic. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today and for your brief introduction. We also have a bit of information that we gathered from a gentleman called Garrick. He's the owner of a wine bar called GIV, and they specialize in food and wine pairing here in Paris. Sadly, he can't attend today physically. He's currently negotiating with his neighbors to get some extra space on the terrace for his restaurant. But he has shared some answers to some of the questions that we posed him, and so I'll jump in from here and there with a bit of information from his side as well. That's been very interesting. So first of all, we'd like to cover some of the actions that you guys have done during the crisis. Simon, what sort of activities did you prioritize during lockdown? And did you do any sort of takeaway delivery? And tell us a bit more about that.
Well, in fact, the week of lockdown, we were about to sign up with a corporate delivery service called TikTok, who were basically going to guarantee us around 50 orders a week, but they only did office deliveries, and so that completely went out the window with lockdown since there were nobody in any offices anymore. And so during the lockdown, then they started doing for non-professionals, and you could have it delivered to your house. So we said, fine, we'll sign up for that. But they had nothing really ready to transmit the information, to deliver the food. And the main issue we found was that we couldn't get our ingredients delivered to the restaurant because all of our delivery people were on lockdown as well. So we basically attempted to do it just on our own. We completely changed our menu. We did small plates, only cold food, and at much lower prices. but without the communication, without the platform, it was really hard to even break even. So we were losing money. We were here 10 hours a day for very little return. And since we mostly deal at lunchtime with a professional crowd who were non-existent, we just had no customers. So it was a bit pointless in the end. But
Yeah.
the fact that we started it, maybe a month before lockdown officially ended, say, now it's put us in a good place. People now know that we do delivery and we have a lot more demand. Since people are still a
Wow.
little wary of coming to the restaurant. So
Yeah.
that was.
Okay. So is it something that you're keeping in place now that you've reopened and things are sort of back to normal in a sense here in Paris? Will you keep that delivery service going?
Absolutely, yeah. And even
Yeah.
I mean, we've completely altered our menu to try and attract more customers. Our prices have gone way down. We're doing sort of smaller plates so we can offer a wider variety and still keep our costs down. So that's been very important. And we're trying to really only use French suppliers and be really strict about that. So, and
Yeah.
only, we've in fact tried to increase our quality while lowering costs, which is quite a struggle, but it seems to be working. We're getting back
Fantastic.
to where we were before, almost.
And then as a bar, perhaps delivery might have been a little bit trickier for you guys. How did you spend the time during lockdown?
Yeah, so delivery we decided against because we are very much a bar and we rely on the social aspect more than anything. So during lockdown, we got on top of things like accounting and things that we just really don't have time to do when we're open every day, because we're open 7 days a week and it's just the two of us. And so we did accounting, we did planning towards the future, things that we want to change in the bar, painting, wallpapering, all of that practical stuff. We wanted to actually get into the bar and do some of those things as well, but we found it to be, well, frankly, impossible because we couldn't get the supplies and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We couldn't get any help. So we spent the time planning for the future and hoping that we could open soon again.
Yeah, so still put to good use, which is really, I guess, the main thing that you do in this sort of time, right?
Yeah.
Simon, you mentioned some interesting elements there that you've actually significantly adjusted your offer in terms of switching to smaller plates. You mentioned reducing your menu price, etc. Was that something that you had in mind even before the crisis in terms of your business model?
Not at all. No. We were. It was things were really starting to pick up properly. I mean, we've only been open a year, so we were finally starting to do well with our average main course was around 25 euros. And now nothing on the menu goes above 12.
Wow. Okay.
The portions are obviously much smaller, but you get a wider variety of things. So for this, it probably works out about the same amount of food, but you just get more variety. So I think it's been quite successful.
As a part of that, Simon, did you spend some time renegotiating with your suppliers?
No, we basically just during the lockdown we spent time trying to communicate, trying to get in touch with these small producers that we knew of, but that were quite hard to sort of grab hold of. And so since they had nothing to do and we had nothing to do, I just basically harassed them for a few months until they finally responded, and then got to talking to them and explained what we were trying to do, and they were quite open to our to then supplying us with food, which they previously were not. So
yeah. Simon, so if you look back on this decision and sort of pivots in your business, would you foresee in 6 months' time to look back at that as quite a critical moment in your business and quite a pivot for your whole business model to
absolutely, yeah. Certainly, yeah. We don't really see ourselves going back to the previous formula, shall we say. This seems to be what people want.
Yeah. Okay. So just touching on communication a little bit, and then from your side, what did you guys do during lockdown just to stay in touch with your customers?
We did the occasional post on Facebook and Instagram, just trying to stay in touch with all our regulars, that kind of thing. But I would say the main thing we did was we organized 2 online pub quizzes, because we do a weekly quiz here normally every Tuesday, and it's become really popular since we started, really. So we, with a bit of help from our quiz host, We organized 2 during lockdown, and it worked out really well. A lot of people tuned in. We've even had some people who saw it online and has now come to the bar to do the quiz live, and discovered us through that. So for us, that was a big thing and a really good step for us. It's the main thing.
Pub quiz, very reliable tool, the pub quiz, right? That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
definitely.
Simon, for you guys, what was your approach on communication? Was that quite a priority for you guys?
Since we were closed the first couple of months, we really didn't do much communication, and our main customer base are tourists and older French people who were are non-existent. So we had whatever posts that we did put online got good reactions, but from people in the United States or in China or around the world who weren't really in a position to buy anything from us, shall we say?
Yeah. So tricky in this case to really connect with your audience.
Yeah, for sure.
But interestingly, you mentioned that the delivery side of things actually is paying off now way more than it did, during lockdown in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people still want good food, and I feel French people are still wary about coming to the restaurant. So this is the perfect option for them.
Yeah.
Even our neighbors will just come down and order and then bring stuff back upstairs. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. So just wanted to add a quick little bit here from Gerrick from the wine bar. He's basically sort of said that during the lockdown, he's taken quite similar actions to you guys. He's created dedicated takeaway and delivery offering with aperitif boxes as well. He communicated quite a lot on social media, Facebook and Instagram, about this offer to drive sales essentially. And he got quite a lot of new followers as a result. And of course, he's really taken advantage of this period to develop a new menu and to touch up his interior. So that's from Gerrick, just sort of mentioning what he's taken on throughout the period. But it certainly seems to be a bit of a theme that the action of delivery during the period might not have been so impactful at the time, but now to reopen, it seems to be paying off a little bit more for Gerrick as well. So just to move on to the second part of our conversation today around the reopening announcement and how that was perceived, a little bit from Gerrick as well, just to kick off here. He, regarding the announcement of reopening, particularly with regard to the hygiene rules and the authorization to reopen only the outdoor seating in Paris, Gerrick told us that he was okay with the hygiene rules, but really uncomfortable with reopening only the outdoor seated area. And this is where, of course, he is today negotiating with his neighbors. So he said that it's been very time-consuming with a lot of back and forth negotiations to try and find some sort of outdoor space, because of course, even being summer and with consumer confidence being low, even that now that indoor spaces are open, that still seems to be a big deal for Gerrick and his bar to make sure that they have a decent volume of trade. Ellen, what was your reaction to the announcement of reopening around the hygiene rules and of course only the outdoor terraces at first? How did that go for you?
Yeah, I mean, we were super excited about the terrace. It's something we wanted from day one, but it's a long process doing the application for it. And yeah, it takes a long time. So we were very excited about it. Now, it was a bit overwhelming at first, and the rules weren't very clear. It was all a bit confusing and all very sudden as well. They announced it the day before we were able to do it, and it just felt quite rushed, and a bit overwhelming, but mostly excited, but bit stressful as well. Worked out in the end. We're super happy with the terrace situation.
Yeah, fantastic. Simon, what about you?
Yeah, I was quite surprised that they allowed us, and a bit apprehensive as well. But I mean, I had only 2 tables outside, so that fit 4 people, which it's pointless opening for just 4 people. So it really didn't change anything. And then they told us we could spread ourselves out, but again, there was no proper defining of the rules. It was a bit everybody was their own a law unto themselves, and you could do whatever you wanted. And it was sort of nobody adheres to the rules, which we try to, but at one point are they going to start enforcing the rules, and then everything's going to fall apart?
Yeah.
It was just very, very unclear. So I thought it was a trap, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
And then, I mean, both of you, did either of you consider not reopening under these conditions?
yeah, absolutely. I had to we had to take a loan out to keep the business afloat, and we basically planned on not reopening until September because lack of tourists,
Yeah.
lack of sort of enthusiasm for reopening a half-open restaurant just didn't. Well,
Yeah. No, for us, we knew we wanted to reopen when we could, but when it was announced, because it was so last minute, we did briefly think about holding off for maybe a few days just to see what other places would be doing, how it would work. But then on the day, it was such a beautiful day, and we'd spoken to some friends, and people were so excited about getting out again. We decided to just jump in, put some tables out, see how we went, try and enforce the masks. And we ran out and bought the gels and big boxes of masks and all of that stuff. And yeah, we decided to just go for it and jump in, as we've done from the start of our business. Jumped in at the deep end. Wing it.
And then did you find that those early punters came prepared? Did they come with their masks? Did they come with the gels? Were they quite respectful? Did you have any sort of social misbehavior, any issues like that?
I mean, yes and no. When you tell people that these are the rules now and you have to wear a mask when you leave your table and etc., people all seem to understand and be okay with it and go, yes, we get that those are the rules, but they're very quickly forgotten as well, which is understandable. It's not something we're used to. So, but it's hard to police for sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to walk around the tables going, no, you have to sit down. You're not wearing a mask. You're not allowed at that table. It's trying to create a fun, relaxed vibe. So
yeah. And do you feel that kind of policing has quite a serious impact on the atmosphere of the place, or are people quite jovial about it and quite positive overall?
People are pretty good about it in general, but I think it's more annoying for us, honestly, because we constantly have to, keep a lookout and just do our best to enforce it.
Yeah.
People try, and we try, and that's all we can do, I think.
Absolutely.
Try our best.
Simon, so you mentioned that your reservation systems were down for the first couple of weeks. As soon as things were back live and running, did you see a stream of reservations coming in quite quickly, or did you sense some hesitation there?
yeah, people were definitely hesitant, especially with when we were only allowed to have people outside. People would book and then call us up and say, "Oh, but I mean, do you have a room?" And I'd say, "Oh no, we sold the room. Now we only have a terrace," and they didn't get the joke. And so, like, no, we have a room, but you're just not allowed inside. And they, it'd be, "Oh, but is there any way we can still sit inside?" Like, no, there's not. And the people that were coming out and that were booking were the ones that weren't worried in any way. So they wanted to go back to normal. And, but it did take a time, and like we used to have bookings, a month in advance, 2 months in advance, and we have none of that. It's really all last minute. People really don't plan that far ahead at the moment, it seems anyway, which is a massive change.
Yeah. Did either of you see a big shift in demographic with comes to your restaurant?
Oh yeah, for me, absolutely, yeah. A much younger crowd, and like our neighbors I've so many more neighbors all of a sudden. It seems they're all really supportive. They saw us working very little while we were semi-open, and so when they could finally come, they really stood up and came. So that's really, really pleasant.
Yeah, I'd agree with the neighbor aspect for sure. We've got lots of people from the area coming in now, which is really cool. We didn't have that to the same extent before. I think that Terrace has really helped us with that as well. It increases our visibility. People can see us from the top of the street and they come in to say hello. And yeah, definitely much more people from the area, which is really cool.
Definitely. And then did you find, you mentioned earlier on that it was a bit of a punt for you guys to open the terrace on the day because it was a nice day, etc. How did that go? Did it pay off? Was it worth it?
Yes, Definitely.
Right, that's really good to hear. Really encouraging to hear.
We ran out with our tables. We set it up as well as we could. We posted a picture on Facebook, and an hour later, we had a packed terrace. It was great.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Brilliant. And just to wrap up the section, thank you so much for your comments from Garrick as well, saying that he was quite preoccupied and concerned about whether customers would come back or not. And then it slowly started to trickle in, and they started to come back. And alongside that, some new customers as well. And he really felt strongly that his work during lockdown on social media and the delivery offers really helped to maintain a strong link with his clientele, which was evident once he reopened. So again, just confirming that. Just thinking about how the last 3 weeks have gone since reopening. Simon, your restaurant depends quite highly on tourism. So I imagine that definitely has a big impact on you. In the meantime, have you noticed, support from your immediate neighbors in a big way?
Oh yeah, that's it. They've become our core demographic. It's just neighbors. Some that previously really sort of looked badly upon us and our presence here, and they've completely changed their tune. They come and they talk to us and they ask how we're going. They actually seem to care, which is a bit unusual for French people. But it's really created a much more communal atmosphere, especially even in the neighborhood. People seem to be closer to each other, and I'm really happy to help out their local business, which is quite nice. Yeah, really pleased.
And then on your side, did you notice a change in your clientele's habits in terms of the times that they come out, or any change in their behavior as such?
Yeah, I mean, before lockdown, I would say we would have our standard week would be quiet Monday, busy on Tuesday for the pub quiz, and then the rest of the week would be, somewhere in between. But then Friday, Saturday, we'd have big nights, and it's changed in the way of now it's much more of an even flow. We don't have those massive Fridays and Saturday nights because we simply can't with the distancing and everything. But we have people in every afternoon. It's much more even day to day now, which is quite nice. So steady flow rather than
more even, steady flow rather than the peaks that you used to have. So by that, does that mean that your midweek trade has picked up and weekends drop down, right? Just a flat.
Yeah, that's basically it. It's just sort of evened out. Yeah.
And that must be quite useful just in terms of, predicting how the week's going to go, your stock levels, your staffing levels, just making sure that you get that all right.
For sure.
Yeah.
We've it's been pretty consistent since we've reopened, which is just nice for us.
Yeah. Simon, you mentioned that you have a different demographic to before, perhaps slightly younger, definitely more neighborly, and very supportive by the sounds of things. Did you see any changes in behaviors in terms of times of dining out, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would say almost the exact same as Ellen. It's more evenly spread out over the week. We don't have a huge Saturday, which was usually, or Saturday evening was our best night, and now Tuesdays are almost better. However, we have no lunch service to speak of. I mean, we had 2 covers this lunch where normally we'd have 20, so it's real. That's a real knockback.
Yeah,
but that's good.
And
we
so,
assume that will come back with time, though. So
yeah, your demographic on lunch was, did you mention, quite corporate, the office?
Yeah. It was not just neighbors. So we have a lot of sort of hospitals, research centers around. So it would be a lot of people from that sort of milieu, and I guess they're not really going out in public much, or they maybe don't have time. So we have no lunch crowd whatsoever.
Yeah. Are French is the French advice at the moment that people can go back to work, fully, or is it still to sort of work from home if you can?
Again, that's not entirely clear to me.
Good
They are
question.
allowed to go back to work, and people are encouraged to go out again. But it's also said that if you can work from home, then you should work from home. So victory like that.
Sounds about the same in the UK, actually.
It's not very clear.
A little bit of a gray area.
Yeah, go to work, don't go to work.
Definitely.
So just a quick input from Garrick, just on this one, mentioning that for him, he has a team of employees that he has some concerns around his employees' willingness to come back to work and working in the environment, knowing that there might be risk. He said that he didn't get any negative feedback from customers on difficulties relating to employees. And he mentioned that his employees were, in fact, quite excited to come back to work. So that's really positive as well. I certainly sense the same sentiment in the UK across the board. Lastly, just wanted to touch base around, confidence, consumer confidence and your confidence. Ellen, what is your confidence level for the activity recovering from now until the end of the year?
I mean, summer is always a tricky period in the city because a lot of people go away, obviously, and we're a bit nervous in that aspect. But at the same time, people might not be traveling as much this year, and we're hoping that the expats that are here might stick around because that's our, main people. But we're judging by these past few weeks, it's been going well, and I think we feel quite positive about it. And all we can do is keep working and keep trying to think of fun events and things we can do to work around, with the rules we've been given, and just try and be creative about it and keep people interested. So yeah, cautiously optimistic, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, great. Simon, how about you? What's your confidence level of full recovery, if not better, by the end of the year?
Oh, you're on mute, Simon.
I think you're on mute, Simon.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I have very little confidence until we have a return of tourists. It's a bit up in the air. And even French tourists and the whole, if like concerts, fashion week, all that stuff is not going to happen until next year.
Yeah.
No corporate events, no private events, none of that. It'd be tough without all those all that potential revenue. I think anyway. Yeah. So we won't see and back to normal, I think, till next year, for me anyway.
Yeah. I think the great thing about what both of you have said, and also from the feedback that we have here from Garrick, is actually that there seems to be a very positive sentiment in the market, a lot of local support, much more consistent levels of trade, which I know is going to be music to the ears of the businesses that are listening in from the UK. So thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to run through just a brief conclusion, and then of course just open it up to any questions. Feel free, if you're dialing in, to type your question in the chat section, or if you'd like to speak, just drop us a text there, and we'll open up your mic so you can speak to and ask your questions to Ellen and to Simon. So just looking really briefly at some of the summary really of what we spoke about. A much more regular attendance certainly seems to be one of the themes that comes through here. People coming early week, midweek, end of the week, and weekends slightly coming down, not being those huge nights that we used to have before. A much more local clientele. So this is a great time for businesses to reach out and to really connect with the neighbors, the people you see every day just around the business. And of course, an attractive outdoor space being quite critical as well. And so a couple of tips that we thought we'd share as well with some of the UK businesses, just around strengthening your communication that you have around your terrace, specifically, is something that will certainly pay big dividends over the coming months as we enter the summer. Strengthening your communication to your neighbors and to your local area is really critical as well, from what Simon, Ellen, and Garrick shared with us. And finally, communicating really well and winning consumer confidence around what it is you're doing to keep your customers and your staff safe. And communication to your own team is just as important as communication to your clientele. So with that, Ellen or Simon, do either of you have any concluding comments to share with our business in the UK?
What can I say? I'd say that you can really feel that people have been cooped up for a while, and they really want to get out again. At least that's how we've noticed it. People are really keen to get out and see other people and have a few pints and a nice meal. And yeah, you can really feel people's excitement, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I hope it'll be the same in the UK, but
Yeah,
I don't doubt it.
I'm 100% confident that if I can confirm that I am very excited to get out.
Yeah, I bet.
So definitely looking forward to it. Simon, any encouraging words for our UK colleagues?
Well, can't get any worse, right? It's gonna only get better. Yeah, I'm staying positive. Like, it was a struggle before lockdown, so now that we're actually back at that level again, it's nice to see people's enthusiasm in particular, which I felt was often lacking in French people, is really nice to see. So hopefully it continues, and this whole outdoor seating thing doesn't ruin everybody's sort of perception of us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, happy out.
I'm sure it doesn't. Paris is famous for this, so it's going to work out just great.
And that's
okay. Yeah, excellent. So we'll move into the Q&A section. We have a question from Lisa. If we could, let's see here. This question is for you, Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
It seems right now that you're not in a bad position thanks to the terrace you've been able to open. What capacity is it? And do you think that without the terrace, it would be financially viable to open whilst maintaining social distancing inside?
So as for the capacity, it sort of depends on the day, because we can use a part of the pavement right in front of the bar. And we also have the right to the 2 parking spots right in front of our bar, but obviously only if there's not cars in those spots. So if we get in and there are already 2 cars there and they don't move all night, then we don't have those spots. So that halves our terrace. But once we do have that, if we have the full terrace, we can get, I'd say, almost 50 people out there. So it's quite substantial. As for the indoor, maybe now that people have sort of noticed that we're here again, we're open, we get people inside as well. But as for the start, I don't think it would have gone as well without the terrace. Definitely not. I think the terrace was a huge deal for us, and it would have been hard to get back to where we were without it, for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for your question, Lisa. Any other questions from our audience? Okay, great. We have a question from Nicholas. How did you manage to keep yourselves, and if you have any team members, motivated during this period?
I'll leave this to Simon because we don't have any staff.
I also have no staff other than, well, I have 2 associates who I guess aren't exactly staff, and we have an apprentice who, well, he was put on his on social welfare for the time being, so he was the only one getting paid for the 3 months. So he was not too motivated to come back, to be quite honest. And so now he's still staying on social welfare till I think till September we're allowed, because we can't really afford it. And he really wants to come back to work though. He's so bored. He's offered to come work for free, and it's, I think the fact that we weren't allowed to work made everybody so much more eager to work. So no problems with motivation.
Just to follow on from that, what about you guys as owners and entrepreneurs of your own businesses going through what is a really, really difficult time, both financially? How did you guys cope with that and keep yourselves motivated? You seem to be both very energetic and normal people. You haven't gone crazy. How did you do it?
Well, I went crazy. Then we opened again and I went back to normal.
Yeah, now we're fine.
No, I basically I live within walking distance of my apartment or the restaurant, whichever. And so I could come here every day and sort of mess around with food and keep myself fit, if you will. So that was really helpful for me.
Yeah. Oh, for us, we opened in September last year, and we've been open 7 days a week since, and it's just the two of us. So honestly, at first, it was a bit of a welcome break, and it was nice to get a bit of a rest, and just to kind of take a step back and look at it from the outside for a bit. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We were just excited to jump back into it when we finally could.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. We have a question here from Jafar, which is basically asking if you would be open to using external staff during this period. I'm guessing from the sounds of it, you don't need them. What's your thoughts on that?
Are you on mute again? Are you talking, Simon? There you go.
If we
Vincent
were to hire
muting
someone,
you.
it would only be for short term. So basically, just for a night. If
Yeah.
we have a lot of bookings, but we won't be looking into hiring anyone full time for until business starts to go really well again. There's no need. There are three of us, which is enough, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. 100%. Same here.
So flexibility quite important for you guys at this point, to have the ability to flex up if you need it, but also to not carry the burden of cost longer term.
Exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We have a question here from Vincent. You mentioned you didn't have much info on the outdoor seating and what you were and were not allowed to do. What info would you have liked to receive?
Yeah. The actual regulations would have been nice. Like an actual, just a list of these are the things you need to adhere to. Because all we heard was you can open again within strict regulations. And then there was no information about what they were. So, yeah.
That was the main thing. But also the information that was divulged, that was shared, was not enforced then. So you're not supposed to have, after 10 o'clock, everything has to be put away from your new terrace.
Oh.
Nobody is doing that in Paris. I've just built my terrace on Sunday, so we're going to leave that out 24 hours a day. Supposedly that's illegal, but since everyone's doing it, and it's just at what point are they going to say, oh, well, actually, you're not allowed to do this. You've been doing it illegally for the last 3 months. And then what happens? Is this just building up to a fine for everybody? It just makes no sense.
Thank you. Great question. Thanks for adding that. Appreciate it. We have a great question here from David. What percentage capacity of customers do you think you're up to right now?
Oh, geez, not very good with the percentages. We were still in the building phase when we were forced to shut down, but we were doing all right. I don't know, maybe 75%. Maybe.
I would say I'm much lower, at around maybe 30 or 40.
Right.
No lunch crowd, zero lunch crowd. Just that's easily half of our business just gone, and a lack of tourists once again.
Yeah.
So still some lagging sort of issues that niggle at the ability of the business to succeed immediately, right? So that is definitely very interesting, and I looked at some numbers in the UK of percentages of businesses that are opening, are already open with regards to things like delivery and collect and that kind of thing, versus businesses that are opening this weekend, July 4th, versus businesses that are choosing to delay that. To my surprise, there's only about 45% of businesses in hospitality that are opening up, restaurants specifically, that are opening up this weekend. There's already about 10% of them opening, and the rest are choosing to delay, perhaps to see how regulation pans out, perhaps to see what demand is like. I think a lot of restaurants are also heavily reliant on things like the theatre district. Covent Garden in London is full of theatres. Similar for Soho, areas with high footfall, high tourist numbers as well. There's just a lot of uncertainty around how that would recover. And so I think it's great to hear from you, Simon, on that front, to say, look, the reality is that it's been a painful reopening, but you're still optimistic, which is really encouraging, and you did some things during the lockdown, which certainly paying off today as well. And then, Simon, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for those that asked some questions as well. Really appreciate that. And we will, I've put out a little slide here for you, anybody on the call to reach out to us here at Brigade. We are very happy to connect you as well to Ellen and Simon if you have any direct questions for them, as well as for Garrick, or if you wanted to stay in touch with them, you're welcome to do so. And yes, we look forward to seeing all of you in the restaurant soon in the UK this weekend. Best of luck with your preparations. We're super excited. We cannot wait for you to reopen. We hope it goes well. And France certainly seems to be doing pretty well considering the circumstance. So thanks so much for dialing in, and we hope to see you all at a table really soon.
Great.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Simon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
How do we get out of here?
How do I get out?